All right, everyone, we made it. This is the very last session before the keynote, the closing keynote. We're at Getting It Done in Clio, a playbook for execution at mid to large firms. I had to read that out because I did not write it. So a little secret for you guys. This is a final session in the mid to large firm track. Coming up, like I said, Richard Susskind's closing keynote will be in 15 minutes after the session closes here. 45 minutes after this session ends. And then we got the Clio wrap party tonight. Anyone going to the Clio wrap party? Hands, awesome, perfect. It's gonna be a ton of fun. Anyone who's not going, I think there might still be some tickets available. We'll see. I know those were selling fast. So, as I said, I had to read out the title of today's session. Getting It Done in Clio, a playbook for execution at mid to large firms. The reason why I had to read that out is because this session title was given to me. It was also given a description, which was provided to me, and then I was told, let's craft a session. And it seemed like a great idea. And what I did is I sat down and I started crafting something with a team of Cleons. And what happened is I built something that I think was not going to serve you guys very well because of three things. The first is the word playbook. So for me, a playbook is something that you can all follow. And it's something that gets you from point A to point B in a very specific manner that is suitable for where you're going. The other thing on here is large. For those who are in the room that are at a firm with 25 and above users, for sure if you're 50 users and more, large means that I'm not really able to give you that directional roadmap without knowing something about you. And for sure, I'm gonna struggle to tell you how to do that within Clio if I don't know you intimately. So instead, I've got a session here today that is going to walk you through and be applicable to each and every person, no matter the size of your firm, no matter where you're going, and no matter whether you're using Clio or a different software, or you're implementing a process or another technology. So let's dive into it. We're going to make some progress. And we're going to talk about innovation. So those are the key goals here today. The playbook. So as I said, this is how you get from point A to point B, common set of tactics, strategies, or tips. We are, first, I don't want to overwhelm you, but I wanted to ask anyone a fan of the Cheesecake Factory here? Yeah, awesome, okay. I've been there too, and it seems like a pretty fun place to eat. However, it can be overwhelming. They've got 250 items on their menu. If you flip through it, it's going to take an eternity. Everything looks great. You want to try it all. But the concept of the restaurant was really take every restaurant that exists and jam it into one location, right? And the way it kind of works with technology today is much the same. We have a plethora of options at our fingertips. And the thing is, we don't always know what we're ready to eat and what's going to suit us well, what's going to fit with our digestion, what's going to give us heartburn. So today we're gonna run through the process that will make sure that we're building the proper mindset rather than just like approaching things willy-nilly without a plan. The real goal is to get you to a place where you don't hit choice overload, where decision paralysis does not have an effect on you, and where you really feel a level of certainty rather than uncertainty. So, anyone here feeling overwhelmed? Yes? When it comes to Jack's session that he talked about yesterday, he introduced a ton of technology, a new tech stack for Clio. it is one of those things that is extremely hard to look at and see, like, how are we going to implement this? We understand that here at Clio, and we want to make sure that there's a way for you to bring on those new technologies in the right way. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is in the notes for this session, we talked about this session being specifically for doers. So people who are at a firm who don't just talk about what they're doing, but they actually take action. So I wanted to make sure we had up here a definition of what a doer is, which is a person who does things rather than thinking or talking about them. So hopefully you guys are all doers here, because I'm going to have you leave this session with some actionable items. Normally you would want me to start a session by introducing myself. I figured it would make sense to do that relatively early on, but not after I introduced sort of that first piece. Anyone who had read the session notes, you probably would have got this introduction to me on the side. I'm a senior implementation manager at Clio. Most people have no idea what that means. Essentially, I like to call it a project manager. But a better analogy is I'm an air traffic controller. So I keep things moving. I prevent collisions. I make sure everyone, your firm, the Clio team, our integration partners, they all land safely and on time for Clio implementations, for the process that ends at sales and or starts at sales and ends at your day one at Clio.
Are you getting paid for that?
Yes, I am, and but they don't pay me for the anxiety that comes with it. They don't pay me for the fear. They don't pay me for the obstacles that we have to overcome, because that's part of the job, and it's what excites me. So one thing I did want to talk about is like what got me to a place where I would be comfortable in this role and where I would be giving a talk to you guys here today. And I had to go back to my childhood, and I had to go back to some of the things that influenced who I am. And the first thing is I'm a little bit strange in the fact that I like to categorize everything. So I would see shapes, see events, see timelines, see milestones, and I'd group things together. A little bit of a strange thing for a young child to be doing, but that was just who I was. After that, I always found ways to make sure that the decisions I made were easy. And I would get to a place where the decision wouldn't have me, spinning in loops, because I would want to consider all the data. And that became a real challenge. Sometimes I found myself really stuck. And that really led me to later in my life, university, early career. And what I realized is I have something that I think a lot of productive people have, but also is kind of a weird thing to admit. I am one of the laziest people you will ever meet. I am extremely lazy in the fact that I don't like to do things twice. If I've done something once, I want it to be easy to do the second time, and I want to be able to give it to someone else to do the second time. So I call that productive laziness, and we're going to talk about the systems that enable that. So I did want to touch on a little bit about my resume. On the right-hand side here, this is a visual representation of every company I've ever worked at. I've put my stamp on it. My fingers are in every aspect of the organization. I'm a little bit of a pain in everyone's butt because I come in and I see the processes, I see the tools, I see what people are doing, and I want to change it. I want to make things better. I want to make things more efficient. Middle of my career, about 10 years ago, I was working at a multi-billion-dollar oil and gas company, leading IT, administration, HR. I was a trusted person at the organization, but I really answered upwards. I was considered a manager, not an executive. And that was a hard place to be. And I feel like that's where a lot of doers at law firms are. They're not able to make the end decision. You have to really work through influence rather than being able to, force your will. 5 years ago, I founded a law firm. I've got a brother who's a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm what they call a non-lawyer. I'm sure many of you have felt the effects of that term before. And you built a law firm, built it to scale, built it with technology at the basis of it. And that's sort of what brought me to Clio. I was a Clio customer at that point. I implemented Clio. And then after I moved on from the law firm, I kept having lawyers come to me and people at law firms come to me to say, how did you implement Clio? How did you do that? And I kind of fell into being a Clio consultant. Eventually I made my way here to Clio, and that's obviously why I'm here today. But one of the foundational elements to me is I love technology. I love creating improvements and efficiency. And I really am bothered by people who like the status quo. I want to see change, and I want to make sure that that's pushed forward. So hopefully we can do some of that for you here today. The playbook that I'm going to offer you today has two sides to it. So the first one is what I call the doer's pyramid. And then the second side is just a bunch of other stuff. Key components, but is secondary to the doer's pyramid. The doer's pyramid is something that I somewhat invented. I'm a generalist, so knowledge kind of comes from everywhere. And I'm sure I've pulled this information from something that exists. There's a Toyota production system. There's the lean methodologies. There's Kaizen, continuous improvement. It's kind of represented in here, but I'm going to take a little bit of credit, and we're going to call it the doer's pyramid, and that's all me. So you can give me that credit. First level of the doer's pyramid is standardization. And anytime we're talking about implementing technology, considering the prioritization of the technology you want to implement, you must start with standardization. There's no way around this. I've done my best to standardize, and I've tried to skip this step. It's not a good idea, so this is where we're going to start. After that, we're going to move to systematization, the next layer above standardization that will allow you to get one step closer to true efficiency. And then the last is automation. When it comes to the other stuff, so things that will help you implement technology beyond that, first, we've got a mindset. That is one of the hardest things to master, but it is critical. The next is a method. Then we've got the mirror. Lots more, we'll talk about that. The human element and the continuum. So I'm going to dive into it. Let's start off standardization. So standardization is really where discipline builds and where you find consistency. It's about consistency and clarity across every action. So this is when you find everyone at your company needs to be doing the same thing. You have to be doing minimal level of the work in the same fashion. This is a base layer. This is truly the foundation. Without standardization, nothing holds. It's kind of, when you think about it, it's like if a client were to call into your law firm and they were to call in 3 separate occasions and get 3 separate answers, that is going to be a very miserable process. So we want to make sure that the base level is taken care of. And what I want you to know is a lot of people say like standardization, it's boring. It feels like a chain. The fact is it's not bureaucracy, it's coordination. So that's really what you need to think about when it comes to standardization. A little bit of an example of a firm that I was working with that has standardization as one of its challenges is it's a 40-year-old firm. So picture this, 40-year-old firm. They're in the New York area. They've got many practice groups. They've got around, call it 500 attorneys, but one of their practice groups has 60 staff. And those 60 staff came to the firm all through acquisition. So they cobbled together over the course of a number of years. And within those 5 practice or the practice groups, that practice group, there are 5 subgroups that came through during those different levels of acquisition and whatnot. And each of them operates independently. They all do things differently. Intake forms are different, the documents they use, the processes, even the tools and technology. They don't have a single practice manager. They don't have a single email system. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. That is a true nightmare. And it is going to it's kept them from being able to increase their business, to add efficiency, to replace staff, to onboard new staff, to provide a consistent product. So in this level around discipline that builds for standardization, the things that you really want to be looking for is you want to be looking for lots of data collection, the same type of data collection each and every time. Things should be recorded in a visible manner. So if one group is doing something, the other group should be able to see what those other groups are doing, those other people are doing, so they can replicate it, they could copy it, they can be acting in the same way. And realistically, you do want to get to a place where all tasks are being done in the same way. So beyond that, we've got standards turn chaos into confidence. If you're running a shop that is chaotic, that people are stressed, they are afraid to go on vacation, the standards will turn that into confidence. People will feel comfortable going on vacation. They'll feel comfortable leaving someone else to help them on a role. They'll be much more comfortable delegating a task out to a coworker. How you really do the standardization is you have to observe what's happening. You have to be curious. You have to watch what is going on. You have to watch the clients that are coming through the door. You have to watch the attorneys at your firm. You have to watch the administrators, the intake staff. You really have to be observant and not necessarily just trust the standard operating procedures. Because I don't know if you guys have standard operating procedures at your firm, but in general, that's where processes go to die. That is not, it's just not a great thing to have if people aren't bought into it and if they don't match what people are actually doing. Next, how to do it, you need to be able to spot patterns. You need to be able to dial into the child Brian-like self and be able to just see what's out there, make connections between things that are going on, see repeated mistakes, understand why those repeated mistakes are happening, and really look for the places where there are gaps and where there are questions that are being unanswered. Next, you want to do something that is called codification. So codifying by just doing the exact same thing through things like naming conventions, templates, small acts like that will have massive impact. In Clio, this is custom fields. Using the same custom field for the same matter type is not revolutionary, but it will change the way you practice, and it will help people feel confident in the data that they see in the platform. Now, the other element to this is it is not a stagnant process. You want to start somewhere, and you need to start as soon as possible. I know with mid to large firms that are in the room here, you likely have a ton of custom fields. You likely have been doing this for a long period of time. So refine, take a look at what you have. Don't be afraid to adjust. Part of the process is making refinements. Standards should never be, like I said, with the standard operating procedures going to die somewhere, they should never be stagnant. They are a living, breathing part of your business, and you got to make sure they're not written in stone. What we definitely don't want to do when it comes to standardization, I do not want you to be like, we don't have all the information, therefore we're not going to start yet. That is the perfectionism that kills momentum. The other thing is, and I know I've been guilty of this, is I feel like sometimes I need to be a hero and I need to do everything and I need to capture all the details and I need to do it all myself. That is not the best way to standardize. You want to bring people in. You want to tell people when you're struggling. You want to tell people when there's information missing. You want to make sure that everyone knows the problems because then they can work together on it. And I've mentioned this a little bit earlier about making sure things are visible. You need to make sure that there are not silos. Everyone needs to see each other's work. And I know that is an extremely difficult thing to say at a law firm. Traditionally, there are a lot of walls and gates between not only different staff, but different departments. We got to break those silos down. We got to make sure information is shared and people can see what is going on. So let's burn those up. Let's get rid of those. Next, we're going to move on to systematization. And this is where reliability compounds. So this is where all that work you did with standardization really starts to pay dividends. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of an example again about a firm that I was working with. So this is a well-established firm. They've got multiple offices. They've got a general practice. They've got a couple practice areas that they've absolutely nailed. They're well over 100 staff, and they're operating fairly well in each one of their practice areas. And really, they know who are their top performers in each one of those practice areas. They know who their best attorneys are. They know who their best paralegals are. They know who the best admins are. They know the general sentiment around who's doing well and who's not doing so well. They haven't got to the place where they are 100% standardized, but they're doing pretty well. This is a place where they really know where they're operating at their best, and they're not able to operate at their best all the time because they do have some staff and they do have some issues that's just part of life. And their things get stuck, but they actually created an internal team, and they followed each and every staff member. They went from department to department, and they documented processes in a way that was visible across all of the teams. And they put that documentation in a place where it could be seen, and they started having their team use that documentation when they would go through their intake, go through their management. And what they recognized is they saw that as people were using that documentation in the moment to take actions, they would find places where the documentation did not match up. So they would have to make a decision. Do they make a new process? Do they fork the process? Do they update the process? And that really became revolutionary for them. And from that, they now had a system. In each areas of their business, they had a true system. Not yet tech enabled, but they knew how they would move something from A to, let's call it D, E, or F in their process. And it was consistent. That's where those standards that they had put together really turned into a structure. It wasn't revolutionary. It didn't require a huge amount of technology, but it was something that they were able to do relatively efficiently and over a period of time that was acceptable. Those systems create environments where good habits and best practices thrive. Now, how do we do this systematization thing? Once again, you have to do what that firm was doing, and you have to diagram what really happens, not what people say. And we have to embed your diagrams where people live. You have to make sure that things are visible and people are following them step by step. Task lists, checklists, have templates, have diagrams on the wall, whatever you can do to make sure people see those processes. And number one of the things that I love to talk about is accountability has to be assigned to a single person in any given area. So have someone accountable. If you've got a specific process, designate someone who is that person who's responsible for it. Once again, for systematization, silos are a killer. You cannot systematize with silos. So you got to get rid of that. Change resistant legacy systems can be a huge problem. If you've got a software where a number of your staff can't see into it, you can't export data, you can't see connections between your data, that can be a problem. So you really have to look at that. And then memory-based work. If anything lives in someone's head, you have to extract that information. You have to document it. It has to be somewhere where people can access it 24/7, where they can review it, where they can adjust it. Next, automation. So this is a sexy part. This is what most people start to think of as magic. This is truly what magnifies everything that is underneath. And the challenge is it will magnify brilliance, but it will also magnify chaos. If your standards are not in place, if your systems are not in place, and you try to automate, you're gonna be automating just pure chaos, and it's gonna be a mess. So try and make sure that your lower elements on this pyramid are in order. Automation here will free you to focus on the higher value work. So what I like to always talk about is your unique, what you're uniquely qualified to do, and the thing that gives you energy and passion. So whether that's talking to your clients, whether that's building systems, whether that is, thinking about innovative ideas, or maybe it's heads down, plugging away, doing quiet work. Automation will free you to focus on the areas that you're best at and that you're most interested in. How you do this. So automation, you have to start with what is repeatable. You have to look at your firm to be like, what are we doing over and over and over again? And what of those things that we do over and over again are repeatable, are rules-based? What can you put guidelines on and say, every time you do this, you have to have a rule for it and you got to follow that rule. And if the rule does not fit, you have to update the rule. From there, start small. Start in a pilot type program. Do something in a corner of the business, in one small practice area, with one matter type, with one customer type. Just get a start, but don't feel you have to automate firm-wide. That is one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people try and do too much too fast. You need to prove the concept. You have to, a lot of the time, do it in a manual way and prove that your system exists, then add technology to it. That scale will come, and it truly will change, but you have to make sure that there's a good foundation to it. And then lastly, estimate and measure the impact. You have to know about the work that you're doing, the time saved, the errors reduced, the dollars recovered. What you don't want to do, and I'm sure everyone's heard this term, is garbage in, garbage out. Do not feed it garbage, and do not try to do too much, and do not give up. That is the key. You want to keep at it. Couple things when it comes to all the other stuff. We're going to whiz through this insanely fast because I'm just looking at the time and I know we're running a little short here. The mindset. Once again, around this pyramid, you need a couple things. You have to be curious. You have to be bold. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to share your ideas. You have to be willing to have someone debate your ideas. You have to have consistency, control, and discipline. You gotta stick with it. The courage starts the motion, discipline sustains it. Next, the method. So here you gotta document. You have to make sure that everything is written down and you have a record of what you've done. And you've gotta iterate. You gotta make small adjustments to what you've done. And start small, do one step. This is a process. You wanna be better today than you were yesterday. You don't necessarily need to be the best. You'll get there if you are a little bit better today, each and every day. And then you have to think about the risks and you have to manage the risks. You have to be ahead of those risks. Get ahead of it. Progress loves a paper trail and motion beats perfection. So the mirror, this is the one thing that I think is most important. And this is self-reflection. This is, you have to understand who you are today, who your firm is today. You have to understand their tolerances. You have to understand their budgets. You have to understand their bandwidth. You've got to really have that self-reflection. Sit down with your team and talk about, like, what are we ready to do? Are we ready to do this? What are our timelines? Be realistic. Have feedback loops. Open it up to team members to say, this is our plan. What do you guys think of it? Don't be afraid of getting feedback and then adjusting the plan. Course correct. Make changes when necessary. That reflection will turn your experience into an evolution. The human element. So this is the hardest part. This is change management. So this is where, as a doer, you really are going to be looking at influence over authority. If we all were managing partners here, we probably could just come in and say, we're going to get this done. We're going to make the changes here today. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So what we have to do is we have to sell our idea. We have to make people see the vision. We have to talk about what we're doing. We have to show the future. Do what Jack did yesterday, where you paint the visual of what things could be, but then come back to having a solid plan to make sure people trust in what you're doing and they can see the next step. When you're going to come up against resistance to change, and take that. Make sure that you understand why people are resistant. Make sure you understand why people might not want to implement something that you're doing. Be empathetical. And then really look at adoption. Understand who's on your side, who's following your processes, who's using your tools. Talk to them about it. Let them know when things are happening, when changes are happening. Make sure that people are fully informed with your plans as you go through these technology implementations or technology implementation plans. The small pilots are in trust, and trust will fuel your progress. The continuum. So the continuum, this is one of the key elements here, and I'm sure as everyone is a little bit excited and maybe a little bit overwhelmed by what we're seeing around AI, you need to understand that the journey, this is all a journey. This is not a destination. You're going to be getting on a train and there is no end stop. You're going to be going from stop to stop to stop, but you're never getting off this train. And that's a good thing. It's an exciting thing. This is not necessarily linear either. You're going to be going through ups and downs. That's okay. It's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay to be scared. You don't have to be perfect. Perfection truly is an enemy. Make sure that you show up with your whole self. Be vulnerable. Know that we all have some challenges to deal with, and then take that vulnerability and be adaptable. Be open to change. Be open to criticism. And the real key here is you want to be taking strides each day. Momentum over milestones. One step each day will get you further along that journey. And here you are truly never done. So once again, we've got the doers pyramid that will help you through all different types of implementations, really, whether that's technology or process or any like wholesale large changes at your organizations. The mindset, the method, the mirror, the human element, the continuum, that's all the other stuff that wraps around that pyramid. And the scariest side of this all is AI. And you're probably thinking, okay, how does AI fit into all of this? AI will help you with every single one of these things. If you treat it in the right way, it can help you with each and every element. And just use it wisely. Know that you have to have the foundation of your pyramid, standardized systematization, automation. That will make your use of AI that much better. So early on within the guidance of this chat, within the app, we've got a survey that we built here today for you. And that survey is your first step in guided self-reflection. So we've got a QR code here you can scan. There's also a link within the app. And from there, it'll take you to a survey. The survey is relatively basic. 10 questions shouldn't take you all that long to answer. It'll ask you questions about your firm. And then after you've completed that survey, you're going to see some results. And those results are going to talk to you about some Clio features that we think could be well suited for you. Now, right off the bat, I said here today, I don't know you. I don't know the exact size of your firm. I don't know your tech stack. I don't know your tolerance. So don't hold this with a grain of salt. Don't hold me to it. Look at the survey results. If it's not a great fit for you, you can expand it and you can see all the results no matter how you answered the survey. And you'll see a plethora of different features and things that we want to highlight that could be useful for your firm. The key with that survey though, is it is your call to action. Once you have it completed, once you've looked it over, the call to action is your execution in motion. What I want to highlight here today is we've got a professional services team that can help you implement if you're struggling to do some of this on your own. We've got an amazing support team here at Clio. The support widget within your Clio app will help you instantly. It's supercharged with AI. You can get all the answers you need there. That's a great place to start. If you're a Clio customer today, you've got a CSM, a customer success manager you can reach out to. You can reach out to me if you've got questions as you're thinking about your technology journey and about your next steps. But one thing I do want to let you know is this survey that we're presenting to you here today, the survey element, not the contact information and who you need to go to, this is perishable. And one of the reasons why it's perishable is what we saw Jack talk about yesterday. Technology, a huge amount of technology is coming at us in a wave. And you got to be ready. That wave, it looks like a big wave now, but I'm going to say we're going to look back and it's a tsunami. This is huge. We're going to be in a completely different place in 5 to 10 years from now. So know that this survey is perishable. It might only be good for the next couple weeks, couple months, and then we're going to have to do this all over again. You're going to have to go back to the doers pyramid. You're going to have to go back to all that other stuff. You're going to have to think about how you'll adopt technology. That is everything here today. I know I went a little bit over. I thank you guys so very much for being here today. Richard Suskins is up in about 37 minutes, 35 minutes. Please enjoy that. If you've got any questions for me, I'll be sticking around a little bit after. Once again, I am Brian Atkins on the implementation team. You can reach out to the professional services team if you want to know more about how I might be able to help you. But thank you so much and enjoy the last little bit of the conference.